Today, we're going to talk about an idea, but not just any idea. We're talking about an idea so powerful that it toppled kings, completely erased borders, and literally redrew the map of Europe. This is the story of nationalism and how it exploded onto the scene in the 19th century.
Okay, just take a look at this. Back in 1848, a French artist named Frédéric Sérieux had this incredible vision of a world without kings. You can see all these different nations with their flags marching in a long procession. But they're not paying homage to a king. No, they're marching toward the Statue of Liberty. And check out what's on the ground in the front. Those are the shattered crowns and symbols of absolute monarchy. This one image just perfectly captures the wild, revolutionary dream that was taking over Europe.
So what was this big dream all about? Well, it was about creating something totally new, the nation-state. See, before this, you didn't really have a country, you had a kingdom. Your loyalty was to some king or a royal family, not to your people. The whole idea of the nation-state just flipped that script completely. It basically said, hey, if we share a language, a culture, a history, shouldn't we have our own country run by us? But an idea this radical, I mean, where does it even come from? It wasn't dreamed up in some quiet university or royal palace. Nope. It was forged in the fire of one of the most important events in all of human history, the French Revolution.
Think about it. The French Revolution was really the first massive experiment in building a nation. All of a sudden, power wasn't in the hands of one king. It belonged to the people, the citizens. Even the words people used started to change. They talked about la patrie, the fatherland, and les citoyens, the citizen. They got a new flag to rally behind, a single national language to unite them, and getting rid of all those annoying internal taxes made them feel connected in a way they never had before. For the very first time, people started to really feel, well, French.
But here's the thing about revolutionary ideas. They always face a backlash. The old world of kings and emperors wasn't just going to fade away quietly. Oh no, they were about to fight back. And that pendulum of power was about to swing hard in the other direction.
And right at the heart of this was one man, Napoleon Bonaparte. He was a complete paradox. On the one hand, you could see him as a liberator. As his armies marched across Europe, they brought incredible reforms, like legal equality and getting rid of the old feudal system. But on the other hand, he was an absolute conqueror. His rule meant heavy taxes, censorship, and being forced to join his army. He was basically a walking contradiction, spreading revolutionary ideas while being a dictator himself.
So by 1815, the old powers of Europe had just had enough. They ganged up and finally defeated Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo. Then they all met for the Treaty of Vienna, where they basically tried to hit the undo button on the entire French Revolution. They put the old monarchies back on their thrones, gave power back to the church and the aristocrats, and did everything they could to crush these dangerous new ideas about freedom and nationalism.
But here was their problem, and the Austrian Chancellor Metternich put it perfectly. When France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches a cold. And you know what? In 1830, France sneezed again with yet another revolution. And just like Metternich predicted, that cold spread like wildfire, sparking rebellions all over the place, like in Belgium, which broke away from the Netherlands. The idea was out of the bottle, and there was no putting it back in.
All right, so the idea of the nation is alive and kicking. But how do you go from just an idea to an actual country, with borders, a flag, a government, the whole shebang? Well, the next phase was all about actively forging these new nation-states.
To get what I mean, let's take a look at the German-speaking lands in the 1830s. It wasn't one country, not even close. It was a crazy patchwork of dozens of little states. Now imagine you're a merchant just trying to sell your stuff. It was an absolute nightmare. Every few miles, you'd hit another border with different rules, different currencies, and of course, different taxes.
Get this. A trip from Hamburg to Nuremberg meant you had to cross up to 11 different customs barriers, and at each one, you had to pay a tax of about 5%. This economic chaos made it crystal clear to the growing middle class that a unified nation wasn't just some romantic dream, it was a practical economic necessity.
So the first real step toward a unified Germany wasn't a war or a revolution. It was a business deal. In 1834, Prussia started a customs union called the Zollverein. It was a simple but brilliant idea. Get rid of all those internal taxes and create one big free trade zone. And it worked. Most of the German states joined up. And the impact was just massive. Just look at this. The Zollverein took the number of currencies from over 30 all the way down to just 2.
This economic unity created this incredible momentum. I mean, once people started to feel economically German, it wasn't a huge leap to start feeling politically German too.
Now, when it came to actually putting the countries together politically, we saw two very different approaches. In Germany, the job fell to one tough, pragmatic guy, Otto von Bismarck. He famously said unity wouldn't be won with speeches, but with blood and iron. And he wasn't kidding. He used 3 short, strategic wars to build the German Empire from the top down. Italy's story was more of a messy team effort. You had the revolutionary spirit of Mazzini, the clever politics of Cavour, and the heroic battles of Garibaldi all coming together.
But building a nation isn't just about politics and war. You got to capture people's hearts and minds, right? And that's where culture comes in. The whole Romantic art movement was all about celebrating shared history and folk tales. Philosophers argued that the true soul of a nation was in its common people. In places that were being oppressed, like Poland, just speaking your own language was an act of rebellion. Artists even gave the nation a human face, creating figures like Marianne for France or Germania for Germany, to make this abstract idea feel personal and real.
So for most of the 19th century, nationalism was seen as this amazing force for freedom, for bringing people together. But as the century started to wrap up, this incredibly powerful idea, it began to take a much darker, much more aggressive turn.
That drive to create a proud, strong nation started to twist into a drive to make your nation the most powerful nation on Earth. And this aggressive nationalism had a name: imperialism. The logic was kind of simple and terrifying. If you want to be a truly great nation, you have to have a great empire. And this belief kicked off a frantic global scramble for colonies and power. And nowhere was this toxic mix more explosive than in the Balkans. Seriously, think of it like a recipe for total disaster. First, you start with the Ottoman Empire, which was falling apart and losing its control over the region. Then you add in a bunch of newly independent countries like Serbia, Greece, and Bulgaria, who all hated each other and had big ambitions. And for the final ingredient, you mix in the big European powers: Russia, Germany, Austria-Hungary, all trying to gain influence. The result? An explosive powder keg just waiting for a spark.
And in 1914, that spark came. A Serbian nationalist assassinated an Austrian archduke in the Balkans, and that lit the fuse. The whole tangled mess of alliances, fueled by years of imperial competition and aggressive nationalism, dragged the entire continent into the absolute catastrophe that we now call the First World War.
So that leaves us with this really tough legacy. The exact same idea that began as this beautiful dream of liberty and people ruling themselves also helped light the match for one of the deadliest wars in human history. It brings up this huge question that we are still dealing with today. Is nationalism a force for unity, or is it the seed of conflict? And when does pride in your country cross the line into something dangerous? That is definitely something worth thinking about.